Welcome back. Two guys and a stack of comics.
That's Mike. I'm Reed. We just finished in the last couple weeks going through our 1 through 32 rankings of the MCU. Going through all the films and kind of what we appreciated about them and what we liked and didn't like in some cases.
The 32 movies. Perhaps you've seen episodes
1 through 4.
1 through 4.
Yeah.
We had to break it up. We did about 8 per episode.
Yeah. No, like what we always want to do in this channel, instead of just doing kind of quick shot going through things, just give a little bit of depth to why we picked what we picked, and kind of why we like what we like or don't like. And, may not always agree with us, but we always want to at least state our point of view on it, enough that you can at least see where we were coming from. One of the things as we went through that list is we had to come up with a format of like how to rank them and go through. And the best we could think of is like, let's not get swept up in what was the theater experience like. Let's not get
what was the
swept
box
up
office?
in how much is the critical review.
How much did IDBM? Where did they rank it?
Yep. Don't do nostalgia or which actor did you like the best. Just purely what was the most fun to watch. What did you enjoy the most? What resonated with you the most?
Yeah.
And like honestly, for me, it's which ones have I watched the most since they came out. And I think that's the surprising thing with the MCU for me is, as I watched the movies, the ones that I left the theater going, that was amazing. Like Endgame, I've only seen Endgame about 2 or 3 times.
I think I've only seen it twice.
The other ones, like Iron Man 3, that I had watched in theaters and went, that was awful, Marvel's in trouble, I've probably watched 25 times.
I think I've
TV.
seen that 3 or 4 times. Iron Man 2, probably about 8 or 10 times.
Yeah.
Iron Man 1, probably about 20 times.
No, and some of them stand out like that. And I think that's one of the things that really stood out to me, Mike, when we were looking at the movies was how good the MCU has been for the better part of a decade. They've hit some darker days, and we've talked about that on some videos.
More so recently.
But I think really the coolest thing for me reviewing these movies is kind of how lucky I was as a comic book fan that I got to experience that era.
Who would have ever thunk it?
Yeah, it's weird.
30 years ago that there would be all these superhero movies. You would have never imagined.
We would have seen an Ant-Man movie adapted to screen. Like,
never. Like
Ant-Man can't hold a comic book
tertiary,
consistent.
Yeah.
And if Ant-Man has a solo book, it's lucky if it lasts 12 issues in a comics where you only need to sell maybe 20,000 copies to keep it going.
Yeah.
And yet he got 3 multi-million-dollar movies made about him.
They were decent movies.
That made pretty good money, except for the last one. That consistently got through, and I think that's the one thing I watch it is I'm really appreciative that I got that. And even if Marvel never makes another good movie, how lucky it was to have really a decade of going to the movie theaters and seeing superhero after superhero after superhero, at least on screen and portrayed competently.
Getting to see Captain America and the Falcon.
Yep.
That was amazing.
Thor and Asgard,
Thor, that was incredible. Thor's my favorite. So I never really thought, I remember when Spider-Man came out, and I thought, well, what's Marvel going to do next? And, and of course my mom was thinking, what they do with Thor? And I was like, nah, they probably wouldn't do Thor.
Probably can't, yeah.
And I was thinking, I don't know what they could pull off next, DC was barely able to pull off Superman and then Batman. And so then you kind of think, well, like, where do we go from here? But I think the quality of the movies, and this is something that we hit a wall with a lot of them because the quality was so
it's
good.
Just so close.
We enjoyed them so much. Even the ones that we ranked lower, they were still very enjoyable
Up through
movies.
24 really. There's only about 7 or 8 that you look at and you're like, and those are all really recently.
Yeah.
That you look at and go, man, it's just fundamentally not there.
Yeah. And so we had to come up with a system because they are so close. So you say like 24-1, they're all really good.
You could slot them, yeah.
And I had a good time even on the stinky ones. I had a good time going out to them. They weren't that bad. I was kind of disappointed that the story went
I think
this
the
way
only
or
one
that
we
way.
can universally say that I want my money back is Thor: Love and Thunder. I think that's the one movie where my life would probably be better.
And maybe the Eternals,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Although I did get a good 30 minutes of sleep watching the Eternals.
It was a little bit a mite too long, a little confusing storyline there. So I think they definitely peaked,
Yeah.
and I think we're on the downhill slide unless something drastic happens. I know DC's trying to do something drastic. Maybe they'll figure it out. Although I don't know if the DC EU ever really.
Yeah, I don't know if
peaked.
they'll ever. It's really, we might do a DCEU ranking. It will not take 4 parts, and it would probably only take 1
I
or
don't
2.
know if they've even made that many movies.
I think it's like
But
13 to 32 or something like that. It's
when
crazy.
we were ranking these, honestly, they were so close, and Reed and I were just like, okay, is it number 14 or number 13? How are we going to rank it? And so we came up with this little system.
Yeah, I was just like, if you were at home watching it, what would you watch? And it's interesting because even once we got that system, there were some movies where it was legitimately
Still
like,
tough.
which
Like,
one? I think that one, but maybe that one.
I want to watch them both. But yeah, like if it was Sunday afternoon, you had absolutely nothing to do. You didn't have, all you had, you were at the mercy of what was coming on cable at that moment, and they both came on at the same time. Which one are you going to watch all the way through?
Yeah, and I think that's a cool way to kind of examine some of these movies. Is just what was your pure enjoyment of it? Because I think so much of people get caught up on now is how did it do at the box office? How did it do at the box office?
What do the critics say?
What is the
about
Rotten
it?
Tomatoes score?
Yeah.
It becomes this trash talk thing of like
But these
trying
movies
to
are
lift
all
it.
about the heart and how you feel.
Yeah.
And when you're at that moment of flipping the channel, that's where your heart kicks in and goes, nah, I think I really want to see the.
It just shows the quality that like writing can do. I mean, had you ever told me that at some point in life they could make a movie about a raccoon in a tree who are gun-toting Avengers?
Yeah.
And that I would emotionally care about that story and their relationship. I would, no, you're insane. Like, even as a comic book fan, that's a bridge too far. No.
It is.
And they did it.
And yet they did it.
And it shows what happens when you genuinely care. And I think that's one of the interesting things that me and Mike do in this list is we both have Marvel Comics characters we like. But even the hardcore comics fans, Mike and I would both say DC Comics is the universe we care about the most. His favorite character is the Flash. Mine will always be Batman. I like Marvel characters, but even the Marvel characters I love. Wolverine, Daredevil, Spider-Man. Spider-Man came in late to the MCU. Daredevil's been in like a 4-second scene in one movie. And Wolverine is yet to arrive.
Which brings us to the TV shows. We got to get to those eventually.
We'll eventually do the TV shows and get through that. But it just shows the limitations that some companies put on themselves. I think what I've always appreciated about the Marvel movies is they kind of strove to get the characters right. And they didn't always get it perfect. I think there's characters like Hulk that were missed opportunities. Captain America, Iron Man, Thor.
Jane Foster.
Yeah. Jane Foster was a missed opportunity for sure.
Oh my God! What a great story that was. To see Lady Thor.
I didn't even like the Jane Foster story in the comics. But the thing is, at least the comics cared, and the movie did it lazily. And that's where we always will rank that one low.
Because it's at the end of the day, it's the story that really matters.
Yep.
The effects get all the attention and all of the accolades, but how does it make you feel?
How does you actually care?
Yeah.
And we ranked the Spider-Man movies really high on this list.
Because the emotional
Because you
level
care about
attachment
Peter
is so-
Parker.
yeah.
And I think that's one thing with this is we ranked these that I really hope is like, I know no one from Marvel will ever watch these videos. It's a small channel, just two
It's
guys
just
talking.
two guys and a stack of comics. That's all it is.
But if anybody does ever watch it, I hope that Marvel would just kind of get back to it. It's the character journey. It's the story.
Which goes
It's
back to the
why
one we just
they've
did.
had these for 60 stinking years now.
And the
They've had
review
these
we
comics.
just did on the original Hulk movie
Got
is
that.
a prime example of story and heart and character arc that really made you care. So we'll put a link to that video in there. Just go back and take
Yeah,
one.
the
And maybe you think
characters
we're
that worked
crazy.
had that.
Maybe you think
No,
we're
and
crazy.
there
but
may be stuff you disagree with, but I think really for Disney, I think we did a video about can the MCU recover, but it's really just, I hope at a certain point so part of me is like, do you guys go back and watch your movies?
Yeah.
Because what they used to do so well is you came out of these movies and the movie was called Captain America, but you left the theater caring about Steve Rogers.
Yeah.
It was called Iron Man, but you left caring about Tony Stark.
Absolutely.
And now it's basically just, nope, what's the costume? What's the action figure? And it's funny is,
What's the effects budget going to be?
my favorite character ever is Batman. And what the MCU is doing right now reminds me of what they did to Batman movies. In the 90s, a lot of the Batman movies, the Keaton ones, focused on character, focused on a story. You look at the movie that broke the Batman films, it was Batman and Robin, which was a large CGI fest, corny joked. How many action figures and toy sets can we design from this? And it tanked the movie, it tanked its sales, and it tanked the brand to where it took Christopher Nolan, maybe one of the greatest directors ever, to get Batman. And I think that's Batman. That's one of the greatest comic characters
and you
ever.
think about that movie, you focus on the story, you cast well.
And what brought it back?
Yeah.
A character-focused story that made you care about Bruce Wayne, who happens to be Batman, not Batman who happens to be Bruce Wayne. And I just hope Marvel gets back to a little bit of that. But even if they never do, the coolest thing about doing this retrospective on this was, man, how lucky we were that we got some of these movies. And how much fun it was to watch these different universes collide, to watch these different characters collide, to see different versions of the Avengers. And in all honesty, the other thing that really stood out to me is how handicapped Marvel was at the start.
Oh, I know.
You don't have Spider-Man until you negotiate a deal about 15 movies in.
X-Men.
You don't have Wolverine.
You don't have Wolverine.
You don't have Daredevil.
You don't have
I don't think they had Punisher. They don't have full control of the Hulk. They were missing so many characters. And like,
and
really,
we talked about this with Iron Man 1. I mean, they were just reaching into the
who's the
archives.
most
What
like
else could we-
appealing character that we own?
that we can,
And they did it.
Yeah.
And it's really, I can't imagine DC. I mean, DC can't get it right with all their characters. I can't imagine if you told them, you don't have Batman, you don't have Superman, you don't have Wonder Woman.
Now go make a movie.
Now go make a movie
Aquaman.
with Aquaman. I mean, and I guess they made a decent Aquaman movie, but I
But
think
that's kind of like that's kind of one and the same. Like,
yeah, it's,
they reached back in and they pulled off Aquaman. They really did.
But it's just, I hope comic book fans, like, even if, and I've heard so much talk about, like, is this the death of the comic book movie? Maybe.
It might be.
I don't know. I honestly think it's not. I think we may go back to how it was in the early 2000s, where it's like 1 year you get a Spider-Man movie, and the next year you get nothing, and then maybe you get a Batman movie, and then the next year maybe like a random Marvel character like Ghost Rider or something like that. And there'll be hits and there'll be misses. Ghost Rider was awful.
they did that one.
Those movies are awful. But I really, even if comic book movies just disappear back into a less is more thing, and I honestly think that may be necessary. I think, 32, when you look at it, really what's crazy is 32 movies over 15 years. That's not to count all the TV shows, all the random Sony spin-off movies, and not to mention like the 15 or 16 DC's put out there. I think hopefully there's just a slow down a bit.
Go back to the basics. You've done everything you can do with the superhero team and the huge spectacle. You've done that. You've taken that to its pinnacle.
Yeah, the Avengers Endgame war scene of 1,000 characters in this giant battle. We've seen it. You're not going to get higher stakes than that.
No, you're not. But you could go back and tell really compelling stories about characters that maybe aren't so much in the main consciousness and get us to care about them. Write a good story. Don't try and build Endgame again.
No,
just
because
do
you
the
don't
one
need to.
story.
We've already seen
You
it.
don't need
And
to.
it's funny is I don't think they learn from the comic books sometimes too. And that, like, you look at comic books, and I think a lot of why modern comics struggle compared to the old ones. You look at, like, Mike's born in the 60s, I was born in the 80s. One of the things that used to be rare with comic books was the events, right? And when one happened, like a Crisis on Infinite Earths, it was huge because those didn't happen all that often. And so when something happened in that book, like Barry Allen dies, right? It was a long-lasting, huge impact that mattered, and you knew 2 years later there wasn't going to be Crisis on Infinite Earths 2.
Yeah.
Like, you weren't going to get that. You look at the modern age of comics. We've had Crisis on Infinite Earths was in 85, I think. We've had like 6 different Crisis events.
Extra Crisis, the
Final Crisis, Identity Crisis.
The Crisis after the Final Crisis.
The Dark Crisis on Infinite
Dark
Earths.
Crisis comes again.
And not that those aren't bad, But it's just one of those things where you would hope that eventually they can get back to just tell a smaller scale story. Tell a story that relates about a human being who happens to be a hero, not a CGI, just mess.
I think they're calling it, Reed.
Yep. But hopefully you enjoyed our rankings. We'll do more. But
come back and visit us. Talk comics. Comment below.
Comment below. Let us know what you want to see in future videos. That's Mike. I'm Reed. We're two guys into stacking comics. Have a great day.
See you on the next one.